Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming to this this afternoon's session of Medical Student Grand Rounds. We are so excited to have Dr. Pablo Sánchez introducing our speaker, Phil Wozniak, an M4 here. But before we get to their talk, I'm going to quickly just overview what MSGR is. So if Phil's talk piques your interest and you want to present on a topic in the future, or a medical student who might be a good fit, you can nominate future speakers. So MSTR was created last year by actually Phil, myself, and a few others to acknowledge medical student achievements and passions. And the setup of these talks are med students will be presenting, and they'll be introduced by faculty mentors, such as the Dr. Pablo Sánchez today. We plan to have these talks every first and third Tuesday of the month at noon. So our next talk will be February 15th, and we will go through April. We will be using Zoom for the foreseeable future due to COVID, unfortunately. So just register in advance. The link will be the same for each talk. And again, if you are interested in speaking or know other med students who might be a good fit for this, you can scan this QR code and nominate a presenter for the coming year. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Dr. Sánchez.
Great, welcome. And really, it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Phillip. I've known Phillip since 2012, when he was a freshman at the University of Texas, Dallas, and he came to my office looking for research. And I was very lucky to agree to that. And he's just been great. When I came to, I'm a neonatologist and pediatric infectious disease specialist. And when I came here to Columbus in 2013, I brought Phillip to much greener and a little bit colder pastures, but he really has excelled throughout. And I'm really excited that he's going to have the opportunity to present to you some of the many opportunities that are available for all of you to further your academic career. He certainly has taken advantage of it during his growth year. As he'll tell you, he was a Fulbright scholar in Spain. And so without further ado, really, Phillip has been great. I'm looking forward to his future career in academics. Hopefully, well, I guess either med peds or pediatrics, but certainly in academics, and that's really our goal. Good luck. It's great to present to you, Phillip.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Sánchez, for that very kind introduction. We were thinking along similar lines because I went back into my email archive this morning, and almost 10 years ago now, I found the original email I sent asking for some help as a freshman in college. So if there are any faculty on the line, if you receive one of these, consider responding, because you can certainly have an enormous impact on someone's life. And Dr. Sánchez certainly did that for me. But thank you for everyone for making time to come to this talk. It is a topic near and dear to my heart. Fulbright was very meaningful to me. But since this is technically an LSI lecture, we have to have some learning objectives. So first goal today is to raise awareness of some truly life-changing opportunities that are available to you as medical students. I also want to offer some unsolicited life advice, looking back as an M4 now, and also to connect the College of Medicine student body to the existing resources that are available here at OSU. So these are the awards that we will cover in this talk. I've applied for several of these myself, and I have a decent familiarity with all of them through friends and family. I will say from the outset, this talk will definitely have the highest yield for the current M1s and M2s, but I promise there will be some opportunities for the M3s as well. So a little bit about me. I was really fortunate to be a 2017 Fulbright Research Scholar at La Hospital Gregorio Marañón in Madrid, Spain. I was working in an infectious diseases laboratory. It was a great exercise in adaptability, because I went over there thinking that I was going to be doing a pediatric RSV project and wound up studying adults with HIV. While I was a medical student here at OSU, I also applied for and was accepted to the Master's in History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine at Cambridge. But I did not receive funding, but we'll talk a little bit more about why I still am really grateful for that experience later. And then last year, I was also an alternate finalist for the fellowships at Auschwitz for the study of professional ethics as a medical fellow. But then the cohort was shrunk due to COVID, which was unfortunate, but it was still, I think it's a great program. So why do I think that this is really important for all of you as medical students? Obviously, these prestigious awards are a wonderful line item to have on your CV, but I think there's a really particular benefit for medical students, especially for the M1s and M2s in the audience. With step one now being pass-fail, having a distinguishing credential like these awards will really make an enormous impact if you can get one. But more importantly, I think these awards offer a unique opportunity for personal growth through travel and cultural immersion. I think that having those experiences truly make you a more empathetic, more understanding human being, which translates into, I think, being a more humanistic physician. So first off, we're going to talk about Fulbright. So Fulbright Awards were established in 1946 by Senator William Fulbright and President Harry Truman. The goal is to improve cultural exchange and mutual understanding in the wake of World War II and Soviet expansion in Eastern Europe. Both Senator Fulbright and President Truman recognized the importance of making a positive case for democracy and freedom. So they wanted to send our best and brightest students to live with different communities and different cultures around the world and to serve as cultural ambassadors for the United States. So for that reason, Fulbright Awards actually have a unique binational structure and selection process. So there are Fulbrighters from foreign countries who will come here to the United States, and then obviously US students who are selected to go abroad. But the selection committee in each country is made up of both Americans as well as citizens of the host country. So there's a lot of mutual investment in these awards. And every year there are approximately 1,600 grants for US students visiting more than 160 countries. So there are several different types of awards available for medical students, and we're going to go through each of these in greater detail. But the really important thing to note here is that Fulbright grants are available in literally every corner of the world. 160 countries broken up into 6 regions that are identified here. So the first type of grant that I want to talk about is the English Teaching Assistantship, or ETA. So ETAs help teach English while also serving as cultural ambassadors for the US. You can teach at a variety of age levels, ranging from kindergarten to even serving as college professors. It's typically about 20 to 25 hours a week of teaching in the classroom. That varies a little bit from country to country. But foreign language requirements are actually not universal to all Fulbright. So depending on your language skills, there are a number of grants available. And these are just 3 examples here. There are obviously a lot of grants, and I think you'd be very competitive for any of these as a medical student. So a critical part of every Fulbright application, but especially for the ETAs, is a detailed assessment of how you plan to engage with the host country. Whether that's through community service, some sort of research, artistic involvement. For example, one of my cohort classmates studied flamenco guitar in Seville. Another member of our cohort, LaShira Nolan, who's now student body president at Harvard Medical School, she did a really awesome educational project with local middle schoolers to address the growing incidence of juvenile diabetes in the region of Galicia in Spain. And for medical students specifically, I think this is an incredible opportunity not only to become fluent in another language, but also getting to know your future colleagues and mentors abroad. I think COVID has definitely shown that disease does not respect borders, and international collaboration is huge. And it's an absolute necessity for both public health as well as research. And also, especially if you take a break after step 1 as a gap year between Med 2 and Med 3, I think you will have earned the right to take a breath and travel a little bit. So I was not an ETA, but my friend Jackson Knappin was. He's currently an M4 at the University of Kansas, and he was kind enough to share his thoughts on why this was such a meaningful experience for him. So I'll let you read this. I won't bore you with reading it all myself, but I would like to highlight what I thought was particularly impactful. And I think Jackson was completely correct about how powerful it is, not just to visit, but to actually live and have a role in a foreign society, and to really understand how hard it is to be a foreigner, particularly when trying to navigate a foreign healthcare system. And our non-English speaking patients here in the US certainly benefit from having physicians who have experience and understand that difficulty. And I also want to echo his sentiments about our fellow Fulbrighters. The goal whenever making friends, you always want to have friends that are going to lift you up and make you the best version of yourself. And Fulbrighters will certainly do that, but Fulbrighters represent such a vast array of disciplines that you can't help but have your horizons broadened by having them as friends. And that's certainly been true in my experience as well. There are also Fulbright Study Awards, and these are a distinct group that are mostly field specific in arts, business, journalism, but there are some that are field specific to STEM and public health. And a couple examples here. New as of 2019, there's a fully funded PhD program at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland in Dublin. And these cover PhDs on anything ranging from cancer to vascular biology to surgical techniques. And then if anyone's out there is interested in PEDS HEMONC and would like to go to the Netherlands, there are several pediatric cancer awards that you can take up at one of the 6 dedicated pediatric cancer research centers in the Netherlands, including Amsterdam. And there are also graduate study awards, which would fund a master's degree. These are typically in English-speaking countries such as the UK and Canada. UK is definitely the largest. They offer more than 40 awards at 40 different institutions. But there's usually only 1 award per institution. So know that these are highly competitive, but definitely worthwhile if you're interested in pursuing a dual degree. And then Fulbright Research Award. So this is what I did in Spain. So they offer 9 to 12 months of mentored research in a foreign country. Almost every country that has a Fulbright Commission will offer research awards there. And I really think that this is the best option for current medical students. And this is especially true if you plan to apply to a highly competitive subspecialty that expects a lot of research experience, thinking of like ENT, dermatology, orthopedics. And it's really an opportunity to establish yourself in the field at a very early stage in your career. And I think the best part of these awards is that they really let you choose your own adventure. You can design a project and find a foreign university or institute of higher education to support and mentor your research. But Fulbright has a very broad definition of what constitutes an institute of higher education. It includes universities, obviously, but also academic hospitals, which is where I did my award, but can also include think tanks. I had some friends who are researchers at an economics think tank in Madrid. And if you participated in or applied for MDSR, that grant application is a really, really solid foundation for a Fulbright grant statement. I think OSU does us a huge favor by positioning us really well, not only for residency, but also for these awards, because grant funding tends to get more grant funding. And having already received some sort of funding from Ohio State to do research is really a testament to your abilities and your potential. And then I'd like to offer a special note on the Fulbright Fogarty Awards in public health. So these are specifically for med students, as well as graduate students in public health. It's a collaboration between the Fulbright program as well as the Fogarty Center for International Health at the NIH. Unfortunately, these awards were not offered in the 2022-2023 cycle that is about to wrap up right now. And it's still to be determined whether or not they will be offered in the 2023-2024. But if you're interested in public health or doing field work in public health, I think these are something to really keep an eye on. The trade-off with these awards is that your choice of country is much more limited, and there are varying levels of language requirements involved. And one of the great things about giving talks like this is the opportunity to highlight someone that you really admire. For me, that is my classmate and fellow Fulbright alum and fellow MedPeds applicant, Gates Failing. Gates was a researcher in Malawi in 2016, 2017, and he was there to study the collaboration between traditional medicine and the modern healthcare system that they're building in Malawi in order to encourage greater adherence to antiretroviral therapy amongst HIV positive members of the community. And upon his return to the US and starting med school at OSU, Gate really channeled those Fulbright values that he gained through his award into his community advocacy here in Columbus through the Albert Schweitzer Fellows Program. And he got to combine his love of cycling with his community building skills that he gained as a Fulbrighter to teach not only bike safety, but also to highlight community resources accessible to Franklinton residents by bike, including the library and the grocery store, as well as having some really important safety interventions to try to reduce pediatric trauma. And I just think that Gates is a fantastic example of how Fulbright values really continue long after these awards. And what you gain from these awards is not limited to your grant year. And I really think that Fulbright is truly more than just a scholarship. So going through the timeline, the Fulbright application process essentially starts now if you're interested. So from March to June, you should start working on your personal statements and grant proposals. If you are pursuing a research award, this is the time to find a host institution and get your affiliation letter. There's two ways to approach finding an institution, you can either have a project in mind and pitch that as an idea to a faculty member at a foreign institution and have them sign on to be your mentor. Or alternatively, you can find a faculty member that you are interested in working with, find out what research they're already doing, and then tailor your grant proposal to what they're already doing. That was the approach that I took, and I thought that worked well, but I've known people who have done it both ways. Over the summer, after you finish your essays, you'll also need to perform a language evaluation if that's a requirement in your host country, and then you'll submit your finalized application in early October. Semifinalists are notified in December to January, depending on the country. Finalists are notified between March and May. I feel like it tends to be more March than May in most countries. And then in August, September, you get your round trip flight that's covered by the Fulbright grant to go to your host country and live there for a year. But one of the nice things about this application timeline is that it is heavily front loaded. Once you push submit, there's really not much that you have to do. Most programs do not interview for Fulbright awards. So it is truly just your application. For the M1s on the call, this really aligns nicely with your summer break. So while you're doing your research, you can also work on these applications. So to wrap up this section, I just want to emphasize how much the Fulbright really offers. Unlike other awards that we'll talk about later, Fulbright is truly global. If you want to teach English in Malaysia or do a master's degree in the UK, both of those are options through the Fulbright program. And most importantly, I think there's a Fulbright award for every type of medical student. If you're an aspiring ENT or derm or vascular surgeon and you need a lot of research, you should apply for a research award and have a really awesome credential on your CV. If you're an aspiring primary care physician with a passion for advocacy and community engagement, go and teach English, learn a language, teach kids, and volunteer to improve health literacy in a foreign country and have those wonderful experiences. And again, have a really awesome credential when you come back and pursue your career. So next steps, we're planning to have a Fulbright application workshop in February and March for anyone who's interested in applying, and we'll be sending out a sign-up sheet to your email. We've been very fortunate that the College of Medicine is now partnering with the Office of International Affairs at OSU, both to recruit and mentor medical student Fulbright applicants. Historically, Fulbright applicants have come from PhD programs at OSU. They've had a very robust recruitment effort for other graduate students, but they've never, until this year, really started engaging with the College of Medicine to try to recruit medical students. So if you're interested, Joanna Cucchiella-Blazer and Laura Pierce are wonderful people to work with, and they'll be helping, working with our associate deans to help you navigate the process, especially if you're planning to take that gap between Med 2 and Med 3, how to get your rotations in while also having continuity of your rotations in Med 3 in order to prepare for Step 2. So know that if you're interested in pursuing these, that you will have a lot of help along the way. Okay, next up, I'd like to talk about the Gates Cambridge, Clarendon, and Mitchell scholarships. So Gates Cambridge was established in 2000 by a very large donation from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to the University of Cambridge. Every year, there are approximately 25 awards that they make available to US students. The selection criteria are listed here. One of the big four is a commitment to improving the lives of others. And I would certainly hope that all of us as medical students would have a lot to say about that. And these are the eligible courses of study. They will cover the full length of a PhD, a master's, or other one-year postgraduate course, sole exception being the MBA or master's in finance. So if you wanted to be an MD MBA, this is unfortunately not the program for you. It is important to note that approximately 2/3 of these awards, if not more, will go to PhD applicants. That has also changed since Brexit and the uncertainty of financing at Cambridge and how much they were going to be impacted by that. So they've really erred more on the side of PhDs over master's students in the past few years. If you thought about doing an MD or PhD or going through MSTP and decided against it, this is a great option. And if you have interest in doing a PhD outside of your normal basic science MSTP PhD, this is a great option to consider. A lot of really cool programs like History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine, Medical Anthropology, Health Medicine and Society, just really cool, very important programs that you wouldn't normally find at most places in the US. So the application process for Gates Cambridge is a little bit different than what you have for Fulbright. You actually apply directly to the graduate program at Cambridge. So it's like a regular college application with one additional essay about why you'd like to be considered for the Gates Cambridge Scholarship. And there's a separate Gates Cambridge reference. All of that is due by mid-October. The graduate program itself will actually interview you very quickly after submitting your application. and you'll receive an admission decision usually within a few weeks of your interview for the graduate program. The individual departments that you applied for, in my case, that was the Department of History and Philosophy of Science and Medicine. They review all the accepted applicants and then rank them for review by the Gates-Cambridge Committee. Select applicants are invited to interview for the Gates-Cambridge Scholarship in December or January. And then finalists are interviewed and notified within about 48 hours of the interview in January or February. So the application itself, like I said, you have the combined Cambridge and Gates-Cambridge Scholarship application form. There's a separate funding section that includes Gates-Cambridge as well as Cambridge Trust, which is a massive scholarship, massive group of scholarships, as well as a bunch of other potential sources of funding. You will have to submit a writing sample and or research proposal. If you don't have a recent writing sample, you can write one specifically for a writing sample. That's perfectly fine. If you are interested in doing a PhD, you will be required to submit a research proposal for your dissertation, and then 2 letters of recommendation for the graduate program and 1 letter of recommendation specifically for Gates-Cambridge. And then you'll also be required to list your college preferences. And this is a really important part of the application for both Gates-Cambridge and Clarendon, and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So some important things that I think it's really important to keep in mind if you want to apply for a Gates-Cambridge award is understanding that going in that the process is completely opaque. There's absolutely no feedback that's given on how you were ranked, whether you were even put forward for consideration by the Gates-Cambridge Committee, or if they decided to interview you or not. You'll find out your status in December or January. If you are applying for a PhD, I think it's really important to identify a scholar in the department beforehand and really hammer out what your research interests are going to be prior to applying. And apply for multiple sources of funding. Gates-Cambridge is wonderful if you can get it, but there are many ways to pay for a master's degree at Cambridge. And one of those is your college preferences. And like I said, we'll touch on more of that in a little bit. So very similar to the Gates-Cambridge Scholarship is the Clarendon Scholarship at Oxford, established in 2001. It's actually paid for by funds from the Oxford University Press for outstanding international students to cover the cost of attendance at Oxford. They cover 160 scholarships, full cost of the degree plus living expenses for the duration of the course. Again, most of these awards will go to PhD students, but there is funding available for both 2-year and 1-year master's degrees as well. This is an even more streamlined and straightforward process than Gates-Cambridge. You simply just apply to Oxford by the December or January deadline for the individual course that you would like to take. Applicants are then ranked by the individual departments based on these criteria. And then you're notified in April or May. The late notification is a little bit of a problem for med students simply because you will have already registered for your rotations and scheduled those out. You may have registered for step 1, tried to plan a vacation, et cetera. So if you do apply for that, know that it might be quite late in the game when you get the award. And like Gates-Cambridge, you should apply for multiple sources of funding. Just to highlight that there's a lot of really cool people at OSU. I asked my classmate, Luis Regalado, to share his thoughts on what it was like to have a master's degree from Oxford and what that meant to him. And I think Luis's experience is really a testament to the impact that the combination of 1, being abroad, and 2, having world-class mentorship at a world-class institution like Oxford can really make on both your personal and professional growth. So a word on the Oxford and Cambridge colleges. These essentially function as your home base within the university. You live there, you study there, you eat there, and they have in-house faculty that serve as mentors and tutors. And these colleges also have their own scholarship opportunities. So you need to be very strategic in selecting your college preferences. At Cambridge, you select 2. And a great example of kind of the dynamic in between multiple colleges is Wolfson versus King. So Wolfson is almost exclusively for grad students. Very few undergrads, if any, will be there. It's a smaller college. If you're applying as a graduate student, you have a great chance of being accepted to live at that college, but they only have 1 funding award, whereas King's College is a massive school. It's a mix of both undergrads and postgraduate students, and they have several funding options, but it's also, for that reason, an extremely popular choice. And so it's a much stiffer level of competition. So make sure you do your homework and list your college selection accordingly. And Cambridge provides and I'm sure Oxford does as well, but they provide a very comprehensive guide to all the colleges, so you can really hammer out the ins and outs. and decide what's going to be the best fit for you. And then right across the Irish Sea is the Mitchell Scholarship in Ireland. It's named to honor the efforts of US Senator George Mitchell in making the Good Friday Agreement and ending the Troubles a reality. There are currently 12 Mitchell Awards given out annually, either to study or conduct research. It has very broad eligibility criteria. You really just have to be a US citizen with a bachelor's degree between the ages of 18 and 30. The application consists of a personal statement, a selection of up to 5 graduate programs and institutions in Ireland. There's a list on their website. There's an application and video interview that are due in late September. Semi-finalists are interviewed in mid-October, and then 20 finalists for the 12 awards are interviewed in mid-November. So if you make it to a finalist stage, you have a more than 50% chance of winning the award. And it's important to note that you do not have to separately apply to the programs. You select which degree or research opportunity you'd like to pursue, give them your top 5 choices, and then the Mitchell Commission will work to place you at one of those selections. So final thoughts on these 3 awards: Gates, Cambridge, Clarendon, and the Mitchell. Gates, Cambridge, and Clarendon have a very strong emphasis on PhDs over master's degrees, but given where you are as medical students, I think you should apply anyway. There are multiple layers of funding available, so research all of them and apply for all of the awards that you're eligible for. It's also worth noting that both Cambridge and Oxford accept FAFSA funds. So if you were thinking about paying for a dual degree anyway, I would really strongly encourage you to consider doing those degrees at Oxford or Cambridge. And then Mitchell scholarships are essentially a hybrid of both Fulbright and Gates, Cambridge, and Clarendon. So tailor your application accordingly to have an emphasis not only on being a really good graduate student, but on also being a cultural ambassador for the US. And then rounding out our discussion of graduate awards, we have the Rhodes and the Marshall. Marshall scholarships were established in 1953 by Parliament to honor the efforts of George C. Marshall, American general in World War II and later Secretary of State, and author of the Marshall Plan to save Western Europe from Soviet rule. These scholarships seek outstanding US citizens to study at any UK university, but they have a special preference for anyone who would like to be outside of the Oxford, Cambridge, London triangle. And these awards can cover 1 or 2 years of study. So 1-year awards are specifically aimed at applicants who have strong reasons for wanting to study in the UK, but only being there for a year. And so you have to have a very clear post-scholarship plan. And this is perfect for medical students who have limited time and need to come back and do their clinical rotations and apply for residency. So you can find up to 2 degree choices at 2 different universities or 2 different degrees at the same university, and the Marshall Commission will work to ensure your placement. Like the Mitchell, you don't have to apply separately to the individual schools. The 2-year awards can be used either for a 2-year master's degree or 2 1-year degrees. If you want to apply for 2 1-year degrees, you need a very strong rationale for why you need both degrees to your future career plans. But I think as medical students, you can make a very compelling case for why you would need multiple degrees. The criteria are pretty straightforward. You have to be a US citizen at the time of application. There's technically no age limit, but on the 2022 criteria, you have to have obtained your bachelor's degree after 2019. So if you took some time off in between undergrad and medical school, like me, you may not be eligible for these awards. For the M1s who are likely more recent graduates, this would be a really good option if you were considering a dual degree. You need a minimum undergrad GPA of 3.7, and you cannot apply for both 1- and 2-year awards. That is an automatic disqualification. And also make sure that you look at the specific degrees that are available at the specific institutions. Most of them are covered, but some specific programs are excluded, such as the MBA programs, and I believe the Master's in Public Policy at Oxford is not covered by the Marshall. Similarly is the Rhodes Scholarship. It arguably the oldest and most prestigious graduate program in the world, covers 2 years of study at Oxford and can be extended to 3 years in very specific circumstances. And there are a variety of degree combinations available that you can do in your time at Oxford that I have listed here. 32 grantees are selected from the US each year based on some very broad selection criteria: academic excellence, energy to use your talents to the full. I think you can very much demonstrate that coming from medical school. It's very much a team sport, as well as your truth, courage, devotion to duty, sympathy for and protection for the weak, kindliness, unselfishness, and fellowship. Again, I feel like you should be able to demonstrate that pretty well coming from medical school, as well as your moral force of character. Eligibility is for US citizens or a DACA card holder, and you have to be less than 24 years old on October 1st in your year of application. There is a small exception to that if you took time off in between high school and college. If you obtained your bachelor's degree within the last 2 years and are under 27, I believe you are still eligible, but that is worth verifying on their website. And so final thoughts on these awards. Rhodes and Marshall are extremely prestigious, and I think they are a great option for medical students seeking dual degrees, but there are more stringent age requirements that would really, I think, prejudice these awards in favor of the M1s and M2s, especially the M1s. These awards are highly competitive, obviously, but they are very similar. So many applicants will actually apply for both concurrently. It's extremely common to apply for Rhodes and Marshall at the same time, and just tweak your essays in between the two programs. And if you're interested in applying for these awards, you should actually reach out to the undergraduate fellowship office at OSU. They cover these awards, and this is really their area of expertise. So finally, we have the fellowship at Auschwitz for the study of professional ethics. And I thought this from their website for why this program got off the ground was really poignant. Prior to World War II, German professionals were highly regarded internationally. In many respects, they set the standard for commitment to quality and practice and for independence from state and political influence. Yet leaders and practitioners in each of the professions, and often the institutions they represented, became intimately involved in designing, enabling, and/or executing the crimes of Nazi Germany. FASB studies the perpetrators to display the power and role of professionals, to ask the basic questions of how and why professionals abandon their ethical guideposts, and to create a compelling context for the study of contemporary ethical issues. So FASB was founded in 2009 to address these two critical points, one being the rampant breakdown of ethical values in several of our most important professions in the Western world, as well as to address the challenge of how we remember and educate about the Holocaust as it becomes more distant in history. So these are intensive 2-week fellowships in law, medicine, seminary, which covers many forms of theological study, journalism and business, with on-site learning and discussion at major sites of the Holocaust in Germany and Berlin, centering on Berlin and Krakow. This year, FASB Medical will be June 24th to July 8th, and will be a mix of 14 to 16 medical students and residents. And I think one of the really interesting things about FASB Medicine is it's actually conducted at the same time as FASB Seminary and journalism. So it's a really interesting interprofessional dynamic to have if you choose to participate. These are the topics that they typically cover in multiple forms and discussions over the course of the program. And I'll let you read those here. But for the current M1s and M2s, and even the M3s, and especially if anyone who's on a leave of absence right now, or any of the MSTP students, start thinking ahead and really building your application now for both the 2023 and 2024 cycles. I was really disappointed not to be able to participate in this program due to COVID, but it is just a phenomenal organization. I would really encourage all of you to apply. The application itself is very straightforward. There's an online form. You simply submit your resume and your CV as well as your transcript, and answer these short essay questions that I have pictured here on the right. I really like their application. I think it does a really good job of finding people who are really very interdisciplinary in their thinking and have a really strong potential for interprofessionalism. If anyone is interested, Dr. Ashley Fernandez in the OSU Center for Bioethics, he did a lot to mentor me through this application process. He wrote one of my letters, and he said that he is happy to help anybody else who is interested in participating in these programs. And now for some unsolicited life advice. In this iconic moment in television history, Michael Scott, I think, gave some really poignant advice. And I really think that you just need to put yourself out there, because frankly, the hardest part about winning one of these awards is having the confidence to apply. Don't disqualify yourself. Someone else may disqualify you later, but you should not take yourself out of the running first. And I think even just applying can be extremely beneficial. If you are making it to a semifinalist or an alternate finalist stage, it can be really disappointing to be so close and not get it, but it's still an incredible achievement that should go on your CV and will still open doors for you. And in my own experience, I applied for the Gate to Cambridge twice, was not even interviewed either time, which was very humbling, but it wound up being a really, really fruitful experience for me. because I had to put together a writing sample for that application. And from that writing sample, I've now had 2 ethics publications. I got to give an oral presentation at OSU's bioethics conference, and actually won the student essay contest that the Center for Bioethics puts on every year. And all of that came directly from my Gates Cambridge writing sample. I wrote that would have been August of 2019. And I just had my second publication accepted on Sunday night this week. So year and a half later, and just having gone through the application is still producing a lot of benefits for me. And all of that came up in my residency interviews, and it was a really positive thing to have on my application. So I would encourage all of you, if you're considering the award, just apply for the award. The worst that they can say is no. And so for some take-home points, I think all of you as OSU medical students are going to be highly competitive for these awards. I think you've already been pre-verified. You are a student at a US medical school. Everyone around the world knows how hard it is to get into a US medical school, and it's a very respected accomplishment. It's a very known accomplishment. And so you should be very confident in that. And I think you should apply. No matter what type of physician you want to be, I think one of these awards would help your career. And I think that you would be an outstanding applicant for any of them, and you should just apply. And there are a lot of people here who want to help you. The Office of International Affairs has been wonderful to work with. Joanna Kukiela Blazer and Laura Pierce, like I said before, are just wonderful, wonderful people. We also have our Central Ohio Fulbright Alumni Chapter, which is very active. It's been a real joy to be involved with them since I was an M1, and I am always available by email. Please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions for me, I am happy to answer them.
So why don't we like wait a minute or two in the chat to see if anyone is typing in questions?
Sure. How do we do on time?
You did great. So a ton of information in a 40-ish minute chunk.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have a question. I don't know if you see it in the chat. So someone has asked, for a second year medical student considering the Fulbright, do you recommend going between your 3rd and 4th year?
It can certainly be done. There have been other people who have done gap years for dual degrees between M3 and M4. I think that would, if you're considering it, apply for it, and it would be a great problem to have if you were trying to figure out how to make that work. And I just think working with Dr. McAllister and Dr. Grieco to just align your rotations and figure out when you're going to meet your requirements for part 3 of the curriculum here, and also submit your residency applications. But I would not let the idea of doing a gap year between Med 3 and Med 4 be what stands in your way. I would just apply.
And I guess practically for the other attendees who are still on the call, if med students are interested, should we signal our interest to the deans, or should we go to the OSU fellowships office, or who do we reach out to next to let people know?
Sure. So we've had some wonderful conversations with Dr. Grieco, with the Office of International Affairs. We're planning to have an application workshop, and we'll be sending out a Google Sheets sign up sheet where you can indicate your interest and just put your name and your email, and then Joanna and Laura will be reaching out.
Does anyone else have any public questions for Phil? I feel like you'll probably be getting some more personalized emails too. I too am about, oh, here is another one. One from another guest. Are there any opportunities you plan to take part in during residency or after? I'm guessing this relates to the fellowship opportunities that you presented on today.
Sure. So I focus mostly on student awards through Fulbright after residency, or probably after residency. I think anybody with an MD and a particular research interest, there are what are called Fulbright Scholar Awards, which are specifically for faculty and professors. So if you are able to take a sabbatical year or even a sabbatical semester, there are a number of OSU faculty at the College of Medicine and the Wexner Medical Center that have had Fulbright Scholar Awards. Same for some faculty at Nationwide Children's. Academic institutions are usually pretty happy to work with you on that. So there are a lot of opportunities for professionals down the road. FASB is open to residents. So I definitely, if I can make it work in my schedule, I will strongly consider reapplying to go in the future, because I think it is just a wonderful program. So those are probably the two biggest ones I can think of off the top of my head. There are some other individual graduate degrees at the same time too, that are more for professionals. If you're interested in ethics, Oxford has a master's of practical ethics that you can do over 2 years. It's basically a couple of weeks of intensive discussion in August, followed by self-paced curriculum that you do throughout the year, and then come back in the next August for group discussion meeting with the professors, et cetera. So that's an option for anybody else who's interested in ethics down the road.
You can hang out for a few more minutes and see if any more questions come in.
Like I said, I'm always available by email too. So let me put my email back up.
Okay, awesome. Well, if there are no more questions, I'll speak slowly. So if anyone else has one, if it's okay with you, Phil, we can go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much again for sharing your insight with all the med students today. And hopefully people feel comfortable reaching out, and maybe some more OSU Comm students will join your ranks as alumni of these fellowships. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for attending.